What if I told you there's a book about education that's considered so radical, so dangerous, that people have literally risked going to prison just for reading it? Today, we are diving into Paulo Freire's revolutionary book, Pedagogy of the Oppressed. This is a book that didn't just want to critique the classroom, it aimed to completely transform the world. So let's break down what makes it so incredibly powerful.
So here's our game plan. First, we'll get into why this book was seen as such a threat. Then, we'll look at the real-life experiences that shaped Freire's ideas. After that, we're going to unpack his two huge concepts, the banking model of education and his problem-posing alternative. And we'll wrap up by looking at why this book is still so controversial today. All right, so let's start with the big question. How on earth does a book about teaching methods become a threat to an entire government?
Well, for starters, the sheer scale of its influence is just staggering. We're talking over 1 million copies sold. And this wasn't just some dusty academic textbook. It became a go-to manual for activists and educators in liberation struggles all over the globe, from South Africa to Central America.
And believe me, this was not some abstract theoretical risk. The introduction to the book itself tells these incredible stories of students in totalitarian countries secretly photocopying chapters and passing them around, fully knowing what could happen to them if they got caught. People were literally willing to suffer for these ideas. And it wasn't just his readers who were in danger. Freire himself paid a heavy price. Back in his home country of Brazil, his literacy programs were so successful at empowering poor, disenfranchised people that the government saw it as a direct threat, an act of subversion. So what did they do? They threw him in jail and then forced him into exile for 15 years.
So you have to wonder, where do these world-changing ideas even come from? Well, to really get the theory, you have to get the man. And for Paulo Freire, everything, and I mean everything, started with hunger. As a kid, Freire's middle-class family fell into deep poverty during the Great Depression, and he experienced hunger in a way most of us can't imagine. He describes it not as just missing a few meals, but as this constant unwelcome guest that just takes over your whole body. That experience became the absolute bedrock of his entire life's work. And that right there is the connection. That firsthand knowledge of suffering gave him this deep, unbreakable solidarity with the poor. It led him to a powerful conclusion. Any system that creates that kind of inequality, especially a society built on class, had to be completely rejected and rebuilt from the ground up. Okay, so with that backstory in mind, let's dig into his core critique of education. Freire came up with this really powerful and honestly unforgettable name for the traditional system. He called it the banking concept. I mean, just think about that metaphor. It's perfect, right? The teacher has all the knowledge, all the capital. The students? They're just empty bank accounts. The teacher's whole job is to make deposits of information, and the students are just supposed to passively receive it, memorize it, and spit it back out. In this system, students aren't active learners. They're basically just objects. But here's the thing, Freire didn't just point out what was broken. He came with a solution, a really radical one. He called it problem-posing education, and for him, it was nothing less than a tool for liberation. And when you put the two models side by side, the difference is just night and day. Banking education, it's about oppression, making people conform. Problem posing, that's about liberation. It gets rid of that old teacher versus student hierarchy. It sees people not as passive objects, but as active, unfinished beings who are always growing. And maybe most important of all, it sees the world not as some fixed reality you just have to accept, but as something that is constantly changing, and something that we can and should change. So what's the bottom line here? It's all about dialogue. The teacher learns from the students learn from the teacher. They become partners, co-investigators, exploring the world together. And the goal isn't just to understand the world, it's to critically analyze it so you can actually change it. Now, you can probably guess that ideas this revolutionary didn't exactly get a standing ovation from everyone. Freire's work has this powerful but also really contested legacy that continues to this day. So, one of the big pushbacks you hear is this. Critics argue that Freire's model kind of assumes we already know who the oppressed and the oppressors are before the conversation even starts. They worry this turns education into just another form of political indoctrination, instead of a genuine, open-ended inquiry. And then there's the language itself. Even one of his own colleagues called him out on it, asking him why he insisted on using what some call Marxist jargon. The worry is that the dense academic style of the book makes his incredible ideas really hard to access for the very people he was trying to empower. And maybe the most telling thing about his legacy today is this. In a lot of Western countries, his work isn't really debated or banned. It's just kind of ignored. Even with his massive global influence, his ideas are almost never a central part of how we train teachers. The book's introduction has a great name for this: a sophisticated form of censorship, omission. Which brings us all the way back to the fundamental question at the absolute heart of this book. Freire argued that the old banking model isn't neutral at all. It's a political act designed to keep things exactly as they are. His alternative is also openly political, designed to shake things up. So that leaves us with this final, really provocative thought. Is there any form of education that isn't political? Is it ever truly neutral?